So Lily on Instagram asked, I've heard that intermittent fasting can mess up a woman's hormones. Is that true?
Fantastic question. We get this all the time. And the answer is yes and no, right? The answer is
Yeah.
how you do it. And I want to say this, like I think about it like a bell curve, right? So on one end of the bell curve, there are women out there that, they eat one meal a day and they've been doing it for years and they have no issues with their menstruation, no issues with their hormones. They do absolutely fantastic. If they want to do a 3 or 5 day fast, they do that, no issues with their hormones. Okay. But that is a rare exception. That's maybe 5% or so of the population that may be able to do that, maybe less, right? Most of the women are going to be kind of, and then there are some women that are extremely thin, extremely lean, and, any sort of intermittent fasting beyond maybe 14 hours can be really stressful on their body. But again, that's on the other end of the bell spectrum. And then most of the women are in the middle and they need a level of variation, right? And this is really the best strategy. You got to kind of play around with it, figure out what works best for you. But in general, what we find is that day one of menstruation is when you start bleeding, right? So day 1 to roughly day 10 or so, day 10 to 12, most of the time you're going to have no issues at all with doing intermittent fasting and doing a longer fast, maybe 16-hour, 18-hour fast. You do want to be consuming food. I don't really recommend, particularly during the bleeding phase, which could be like the first 5 days or so. I would recommend consuming a lot of red meat, right? A lot of protein rich foods that are rich in iron. So you do want to eat, 2 to 3 meals, in let's say a 6 to 8 hour eating window or so in that period of time. However, after you get through the bleeding phase, if you want to do your 3 or 5 day fast, it's actually a really good time to do it. Because, it's a great time to just bring down inflammation in your system. Then as you get closer to ovulation, right, you need kind of a hormone surge. And that hormone surge works best when you tell your body, I'm in a time of feasting, right? When food is prevalent. So the body's very intelligent. It says, okay, I don't want to be fertile if there's no food around, right? Because I need to survive so I can be fertile later when food is around. Right now, if we're in famine because, we're not eating anything, then this is not a good time to bring a baby, to the planet. So it just makes sense. And so you want to tell the body, in order to have a proper menstrual cycle, you want to tell the body around the ovulation period, which, is for a woman, it can range, but usually day 12 to day 16, kind of that range. Usually it's day 14, right? But somewhere in that range, you want to make sure you're consuming a lot of calories. Okay. And you can get more carbohydrates during that period of time as well, right? It's a really good time to consume your root vegetables, your fruit, right? Having more fruit on board, right? Getting all those polyphenols, the tomatoes, if you don't have an issue with nightshades, right? Getting a lot of these healthy, natural sources of carbohydrate to raise up insulin. When insulin gets up over a certain threshold, it tells the body, okay, we're not in famine, right? We're good. Like this is a good time to be fertile. Okay, you want to make sure you got a lot of proteins on board, a lot of zinc, right? Zinc-rich foods, which are going to come from your wild-caught fish, your meat, right? Things like that. Zinc is so critical for all hormone production, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. You get that surge right there at ovulation. So you want to make sure you have all that on board. After roughly about day 16 or so, you're through that window. Now you can go back into intermittent fasting, lower carb to bring down some more inflammation, to get your body more insulin sensitive. Because, if you've taken 3 or 4 days and you've eaten more carbs, you want to vary that now and kind of go back into a period where you're doing things to help bring more insulin sensitivity. Because if you keep on a higher carb diet, you're going to create more insulin resistance and you don't want that. So for about 5 days there or so, it's a really good idea to go low carb, do more intermittent fasting, right? And then as you get into the last week of your menstrual cycle, day 21, day 22, somewhere in that range, okay, that is when you go back into feasting mode. Okay. And a lot of women will say that's when you have the most cravings, right? And the reason for that is that you need higher amounts of estrogen to kind of rebuild that uterine lining. And so, basically telling the body, hey, we're in a period of time where food is prevalent and, you're eating really, really well during that period of time. That's super key. So kind of following that sort of feast famine cycle, I think is really key. Best times for fasting, doing like more tighter intermittent fasting are going to be day 1 through 10 or so, day 1 through 12, somewhere in that range. And then day 17 to roughly day 22. And then the times where you want to really tell your body you're in a time of feasting is going to be 12 to 16, somewhere in that range. And then also day 22 to 28, right, of the cycle.
Yep, you covered it. I think I would just add that I think that's the best long-term strategy from a longevity natural biorhythm standpoint, to incorporate fasting outside of an acute specific goal. If you're doing a fitness, contest prep, or, these micro goals that you have, sure, that might not be the best strategy for that short term, but long term for your health, I think this is the way to go. It's how you're created, how you're built. So honoring that cycle, I think, is the best way to go forward.
Yeah. Yep. And then to answer the follow-up question, what if you don't have a menstrual cycle? Like if you're in menopause? Well, back before artificial lighting, we had all this artificial lighting. We spent all our time indoors. Most women would actually ovulate with the full moon, right? So right around the full moon cycle. So I would try to set it up where day 14 is the full moon for you, right? And kind of set up your feast famine cycling around that, around that moon cycle. And I think if you do that, I think you'll see really good results with it. So anyways, fasting, I think, is something, doing some level of intermittent fasting, at least 12 to 14 hours overnight, is something all of us should be doing. And then going into more of a tighter, a more inflammation reducing fast, where you push it into like 16 or 18 hours. Okay. You're going to do that strategically, depending on the season, depending on, where you're at in your cycle. So that's really the best way to do it, to summarize that.